Net zero, it's the buzzword of the moment we'll likely hear for decades to come. Some countries are at net zero, some are on the road to net zero, and then there's Australia. So what is net zero, and why is Australia starting to look isolated on the world stage because of it? It's the aim to get greenhouse gas emissions, things like carbon dioxide and methane, down to net zero. Under the Paris Agreement, nations committed to holding any temperature increase to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and ideally to no more than 1.5 degrees. Climate scientists have said more emissions equals higher temperatures, hence the aim for net zero. Why isn't it actual zero while this net business? Well, that's because we're never going to get rid of all emissions from the world. Even if we could eliminate emissions from all human activities, unlikely, cows would still belch methane, and that's an emission. So net zero means balancing expelled emissions with those that can be absorbed. Forests, for example, can soak up a certain level of carbon dioxide. Now, 2 small countries have already reached net zero. Well done to Bhutan and Suriname. But the big difference will be when major nations achieve the same feat. A general deadline of 2050 has crystallised for net zero. Hundreds of countries have now said they will meet that deadline. The US, UK, Germany, New Zealand are all on the 2050 bus. Heck, even KitKat has a deadline for net zero. Many companies, including the likes of Woolies, Coles and BHP, are now setting a cut-off date for net zero. Not Australia though. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Australia has an aim to achieve net zero emissions, preferably by 2050. Our main commitment is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by 2030. And to much of the rest of the world, that's looking a bit weak. The US, for instance, has given itself even tighter goals. Now, not all countries are on board with 2050. China, the world's biggest emitter, has given itself an extra 10 years to get to zero. But hey, at least it has a deadline. Australia accounts for about 1% of global emissions, but per capita we are the world's 3rd biggest emitter. Getting to net zero for us will not be easy. Our emissions did reduce, but they've now plateaued. More than half our energy still comes from coal, a big source of greenhouse gases. Some climate watchers have said Australia could miss out on a green energy boom if it continues to fudge a deadline for net zero. A key date is November, when the UK will host a huge global climate summit in Glasgow. Australia will be asked how it's progressing towards those climate goals, including net zero. An answer will be expected.